Hi, and welcome to How to Love Living podcast. My name is Jeremy, and this is my first official podcast episode. So, this is a creative process for me, this podcast. The purpose of it is really to kind of discuss my personal experiences as I've worked through just living life. What things I've done that have helped me in working through different challenges that I've had, what has brought me happiness, how I work through, especially with the challenges we're facing here with the pandemic. It's understanding and working through those challenges and really working on your mental health. So, this podcast will just be this creative outlet for me to kind of share that and talk about, what things I'm doing to work through the pandemic, the challenges that everyone is having at the moment. And I want to discuss books, and I want to discuss different music that I've listened to and that sort of stuff to really share my experience. The things I will understand about this is that this podcast may not be for everyone. So this podcast is a podcast from my perspective. It gives you information from my perspective, and that perspective may not match what everyone else has as a perspective. So if you're finding the content isn't appropriate for you, that's okay. What I'm really seeking to do is I'm seeking to find those that connect with this content and connect with the information I'm sharing and how I kind of approach mental health and how I approach just living life in general. So for me, I approach mental health and approach living life in two different perspectives. So one perspective would be understanding life in a logical, here, this thing happened, this is my experience. The second part of it then is understanding the emotional perspective and understanding what is underlying in those emotions. So with this podcast, I really want to explore both aspects. So what logically happened, and then how those emotions work through it. And I want to tie in different books that I've read. I want to tie in different experiences I've had to kind of help in just working through and understanding what happened, how it happened, and what you can do about it, and what techniques. So the different things that I want to discuss include surviving the pandemic. I think that's a big one. In fact, I think that one will be my next episode. Other ones I want to discuss, other topics: anxiety, depression, mental health in general. I want to talk about, happiness, how happiness functions for me and how it could function for you in your life. Hobbies, I think, are very important. And so I want to talk a bit about hobbies and talk a bit about, different types of hobbies and, understanding what kind of hobbies you should be looking at to spend your time with. I think hobbies are very important. And I think the type of hobby you do is also important as well. So we can talk a bit about that. Another episode, I'll talk about just general growth from a mental health perspective. How do you understand growth, and how do you understand when and recognize when growth is occurring and letting it occur and not trying to control it, but actually letting your mind do the growth of, understanding something new and growing from that. So we'll discuss that. And really, I think that the overall essence of this podcast, if we were boiling it down, is how to really survive and thrive in this world and how to do it in a way that gives you a rewarding life, gives those around you the best you that they can experience, and how can you contribute to the world overall. So for me, this is one way that I can contribute back to the world is by sharing my experiences and sharing the things I've gone through to hopefully help you and hopefully give you some hope and give you some guidance and that sort of stuff. So we'll go through this. Here's how the podcast will be distributed. So I will be recording every Saturday. Right now it is 7 in the morning on a Saturday. So 7:14 a.m. Well, 15, it just changed. So every Saturday I'm going to record the podcast and I'll produce it on Saturday, get it out. Hopefully I'm going to get a good workflow so I can focus more on the content and less on the practical, producing it. So hopefully the production can get pretty systematic and I don't need to worry about it. And then I can focus on the content, which I think is the most important part. So I know that the first few episodes are going to be a little bit rough as I kind of work through the equipment. So my mic and all the things that go between the mic and the computer, as well all the distribution methods and all that. So that will kind of come along as we move forward. But going back to the podcast a bit, each week I do want to share what I'm reading and I want to share different music and different things I think will bring inspiration to, everyone that's listening to this. And for this week, the thing I want to share are two. The first one is Bird Set Free by Sia. This has been kind of my theme song this week. Bird Set Free kind of speaks to this idea that things are holding you down and you got to break free of that. And the thing holding me down was actually producing this podcast and getting it started. So I used that song this week to kind of inspire me to throw off the binds of my, self-doubt and all that stuff and actually put this out here and be brave and communicate and share my thoughts. And so I'm doing that. And the two performances I do watch a lot of YouTube in my spare time. So the two performances I like are the Represent Us performance. I'll link both of these in the podcast notes and on the YouTube channel. And then the Ellen performance was really great. So I appreciated both those performances. They're both very different. They're both beautiful in their own artistic expression. And I appreciate that. And I do like that Sia does strive to do the same thing, but do it in different ways visually. And so you'll see different versions of the song, Bird Set Free, that are expressed differently visually. So it's kind of cool just to see that. There's actually 3 different versions. The last version is from SNL. I'll link that one as well. And that one is unique and interesting in its own way. So definitely check them out. I really love this song. I think that that song is the theme of this week, which is really breaking your mental binds that hold you down from expressing yourself and being brave and going out there and expressing, and know that by taking these challenges, you'll only get better over time. A way I could look at that, I'm just going to go into this a little bit and discuss overcoming challenges. And this is what I'll say that I logically understand how to overcome challenges. So I could explain to you how to overcome challenges. The challenge is not the logic of it. The challenge is the emotions. So when you really think about overcoming challenges, the thing I think about most is I'm not worthy, or I'm going to fail somehow, or people are going to laugh at me, or there's going to be some implication to me taking this risk. The challenge is to shirk all that aside and do it regardless. Do it regardless of how bad it is. Do it regardless of what things you can see as the bad outcome or what have you. Really sit down and challenge yourself to work through that. Now, I think in different times, I can talk about a few different times in my life where I've overcome that challenge. So, one area that I feel like I successfully navigate through the challenge is dating. When I was younger, I hated dating. I hated having to meet people and go through all the dating stuff that you would normally go through, which is the nervousness of, will they like me? Will I like them? Will there be a connection? I mean, it's so complicated that it really does get pretty arduous when you get into it, and it can be overwhelming. And so when I was younger, it was very overwhelming for me to go and date. And part of that was just the anxiety of it all. But now when I date, I don't think about that at all. So the other side of it now is I'm more interested in the other person. I'm not interested in how I feel or anything like that. I'm more interested in, is this person going to be a good fit for me? Is this person going to meet me at my challenges and be there for me? And is this someone I can love? Is this someone who I can work with over time? So it changes, the conversation in your head actually changes when you get more comfortable with dating. It isn't about you, it's about them. It's about trying to understand who they are and trying to understand if the magic will happen. And I think part of it too is there is kind of a magic that you're looking for. So you're looking for feelings to happen inside of you and them to be reciprocated in the other person. And I didn't know that when I first started dating. Of course, I had no experience, so I wouldn't know that. But I learned that. I learned that over time. I learned that in good relationships, there will be kind of a natural flow of feelings. But it wasn't until I really just put myself out there over and over and over again and learned slowly over time how to navigate through those things. And I think someone can explain it to you and you can logically understand it. But I think that the practical application of it, actually getting out there and dating or getting out there and doing something, it it's something that you have to go through, and it's something that until you go through it and you go through it several times and you get the lay of the land, it's going to be uncomfortable and it may be terrifying. With dating, it was going bad date after bad date after bad date, then kind of a good date, and then a really excellent date, but then it kind of fizzled out. Or it's going through all those experiences that kind of got me to where I'm at now, where, I understand that it's much more complex than they're going to find me ugly. It is so much more complex than that, that dating is a very interesting kind of way to learn about yourself and to learn about growth. I actually think dating is a good one just because for the majority of us, we're going to go through that at some point. And I think you can use that as kind of a jumping off point towards understanding challenges, and understanding overcoming challenges. Because, of course, you have to overcome a lot of personal inhibitions to go out on a date and to find someone who you can actually like to spend time with and that you get excited in seeing them. So that is an example through dating, but then there's other examples like public speaking. When I was younger, I did grow up in a religious background, and so I had to do public speaking a lot. So I would go to church, and probably like once or twice a month, I would have to give a talk at my church. So this started when I was like 10 on up. So I'm pretty comfortable with public speaking, but there's one public speaking experience that really had me going. And I want to share this experience just because this is another experience that's completely different than dating. And one thing I'll say too is as I'm recording this, I'm hearing the ums, and I'm going to work on that. Note to self. So in this public speaking experience, this was with my company that I'm with, my current employer. This was several years ago. So I was assigned to lead a conference for my particular product that I work with. And I was signed to, and I actually, knew I needed to do this. I was going to be the main opening speaker for this conference. And in my particular group, we have about 300 individuals that attend that, which, can include executives and all that sort of stuff. I was extremely nervous about that. The night before, I couldn't eat. I was in terror. I wanted to not be around at all. I just wanted to have the world disappear. And, you know, it was very rough. But what I'll say is I rode through that. So I lived in the terror, and I understood that I was going to have to get up there and do this. There was no backing down. There was no tapping on someone else's shoulder and begging them to do it. This was something I had to do. And what I'll say too is this is something I wanted to do, but I also was terrified. And, I went through feelings of, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. Oh my God, this is the end. And it's so funny because all the feelings I had were, I feel like, a bit dramatic and a bit out of proportion. But when I got up there and started speaking, the first probably 30 seconds, although it felt like a good 5 minutes, I was very nervous. But I went slow and I focused on my content. And of course, you have all the lights blaring on you and you have everyone staring at you. You can't see them because the lights are blaring in your face, but they're there. I had to let that go. I knew that. I knew that I couldn't get caught up in that just because that was a route that wasn't going to be useful for me in the circumstances. So I had to just let that go. I had to focus on the content, focus on my very well prepared presentation that I'd been working weeks on, and I did it. I wasn't perfect. I'm sure I had some flaws. My teammates told me that I did good, but I did it and I overcame it. And all that terror that I was feeling, it didn't go away. Like, I know that if I had to get up and do that same speech again the next day and the crowd was double, that terror would be there. And that terror would be there. But I wonder that if I had to do this speech every day for, let's say, 2 weeks, would the terror on day one be the same as the terror on day 12? And I'm going to argue no. I think that as I've gotten used to the speech and as I've gotten used to speaking in front of people, that terror will go away. And that, I think, is the biggest stopping point in me putting this podcast out, is that terror. Although there's very little risk in just sharing a piece of myself with everyone. So what I'll challenge you and myself, so I'm going to continue to challenge myself, is push yourself in a way that's not terrifying, but in a way that will help you overcome a challenge and overcome a way that is stopping you from really achieving what you want to achieve. So this challenge could be, I'm going to create a piece of art and I'm going to show a friend, or I'm going to play a song for a friend, or I'm going to go and share a idea with someone. Something where there is fear of that expression and there is fear of sharing something about yourself or sharing something that will help you in just that growth. And this unfortunately takes practice. So like I said, with dating, it took a very long time and going through different circumstances before I became very comfortable with it. So this is something that you just have to kind of push yourself through. And I would recommend that just listen to Birds Set Free by Sia over and over again to give you inspiration and kind of go from there. I think that it is going through and it's really working hard on not getting caught up in the emotions at the time. Understanding that your emotions are there trying to protect you from quote unquote real harm. But a lot of times those emotions are, and we'll discuss this in later episodes, but I can give you a little bit of preview. Sometimes those emotions are trying to save you from very real harms that in previous past experiences that humans had would be helpful. In our current society, in our current state of how we live, there's few things that you can do that actually will cause you real physical harm. So having those emotions, having the emotion of fear of ostracization, and excuse my pronunciations, I can't pronounce aluminium. I can only pronounce it as aluminium. But, the feeling of being ostracized, I think, is something that was functional back 300-400 years ago when you were in a village of 100 people and your village really was a cohesive group. And if you did anything that would put you at as an outlier in that village, then that could impact your experience in life, then that's one thing. But when you're showing a piece of art to a friend, that's a different thing. That's a completely different thing. You're not going to be ostracized when you share something with someone in our current society. I don't believe. I think that there could be things that might have ramifications, and I would definitely think through. But I'll also say that sometimes it is good to challenge yourself in a way that's comfortable for you. So for me, I know that public speaking is something I can do. I know that it's something that, I did in the past, so I can do it in the future. So I know that I have that capability. Now, I'll say this just because this came up recently. Decorating my house in huge balloons and, really putting outlandish things on my house is something I wouldn't feel comfortable with. And that's my issue, and I understand that. But other people would feel comfortable with it, and they wouldn't have ramifications. I think that I'd probably get a few calls from my neighbors who would be wondering, Jeremy, what are you doing? But maybe that's a challenge I need to pick up for myself. Maybe I need to sit down and do something a little bit like that makes me uncomfortable, but won't ostracize me. So be cognizant of the challenge that you're putting yourself through, and maybe pick something small or pick something important and work through it. One thing you can do to kind of help in guiding what challenge you pick is think about something where you can see the ramifications of what you're doing. So if you share a piece of art with someone, the ramification is they're like, "Oh, that's cool." You can tell they're not excited about it. That's not bad. I think that expressing yourself is more important than acceptance of what you're expressing, and art is in the eye of the beholder. So I say that is a safe expression, that even if you get a not excited reception to it, maybe you'll get an excited reception, or maybe you need a new friend. I'm joking. Don't get rid of your friends. You have them in your life for a reason, so don't get rid of them. But what I'll say is put yourself out there and know that your emotions are going to jump in front of you a bit. And there was a phraseology that I really like, that don't get ahead of your skis. And I think that your emotions tend to do that. Your emotions tend to put you ahead of what's actually happening. And so don't let that happen, or at least ride through it and keep going. Don't let it stop you from, you know, achieving what you want to achieve. So, one book I want to recommend this week. So, I recommended my song Bird Set Free by Sia, and it's a wonderful song. I highly recommend that song. I love that song. The second thing I'll recommend this week is a book, and I'm actually going to read it this coming week. This is something I've started this week, and I'm going to actually finish it this week. Is Sapiens. It's by Yuval Noah Harari, and this book is amazing. As we're beginning this journey with the podcast, I think book is a good jumping off point for that conversation. Because what the book really talks about is humans. Who are humans? How do we function as a society? And I do want to discuss some of the practical applications I've taken from this book that I've applied in my life and understanding. I think with this book, I guess it's less about personal understanding. And it's more about understanding humans in general, understanding why it really basically gives you the where, what, why, and how of humans. And I really appreciate that. And so Sapiens is the book I would recommend. I'll discuss some of the concepts that Professor Harari discusses in the book in the podcast. So I'll go through a bit of that as we move forward and kind of go through the challenges of being human, the good things about human, because there's wonderful things and there's horrible things with humans. And that's with any living creature on this earth. They have wonderful aspects and they have horrible aspects with any living creature on this earth. So I'm going to leave it at that. I just noticed on Amazon that Yuval Noah Harari had worked with a graphic designer, and they put a graphic novel out. And I seen the first book, or the first graphic novel for Sapiens is out, and it's going to be a 4-part series. So I'm going to link to Sapiens, and I will link to the graphic novel, and I'll share a link for the YouTube videos for Sia. In the meantime, have an amazing week. Be at peace. Do things that make you happy. And if you want to contact me or just check out more about me, check out my website, howtoloveliving.com. There you'll find the podcast, you'll find the links to the YouTube channel and all the socials. As well, I'll have a blog out there, which I'll put all the items I referenced in the blog entry. And my goal is to have more information in the blog as I move forward. So the production schedule for the podcast, again, is recording Saturday, posting on Sundays. And otherwise, have an amazing week. Have an awesome Thanksgiving. We're heading into Thanksgiving right now. Can't believe that we're already here, which means that we're closer in making it through 2020, which I'm very happy about. And we're going to do this. Peace, love, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.